Hi everyone, good morning and welcome to today's episode of the Boardroom. Today we're going to be talking about a very important topic, a topic where people have been very negatively affected, and that is NGOs. But before I get into exactly what we're going to be talking about and who we're going to be talking to, allow me to remind you that we are live on Facebook this morning. So please do add any questions or comments that you have. We would love you to join the conversation and to put those questions or comments to our interviewees. If you don't manage to catch us live, worry not. This will be streamable back on who'swho.mt, which is Malta's leading business portal. Now, as I said, today we're going to be talking about NGOs. So the non-profit side of the world, of course, it has been very negatively affected by the fact that people perhaps don't have the same income that they had before. Perhaps they're keeping their money closer to their chest. They don't feel they can make as much of a donation. But of course, in a pandemic, in any times of stress, it is our society that needs us. So the NGOs are more important than ever. And we're going to be talking a little bit about how those NGOs have been coping with the pandemic so far, what businesses and individuals can do to help, and the way forward for how we continue to help this important part of our society. And to help me to have that conversation today, allow me to welcome three fantastic ladies from three brilliant NGOs. They are Galea, who's responsible for fundraising for corporates at Inspire, Claudia Taylor East, who is the CEO of SOS Malta, and Lisa Villette, who is a board member at Foodbank Lifeline Foundation. Ladies, thank you so much for being with me today. Great to see you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, and good to see you too.
So, Claudia, I'm going to come to you first. Perhaps we don't understand the business, in inverted commas, of NGOs and how they are such an important part of our society. Could you give us a bit of an introduction around that, please?
I think, and because we're dealing with COVID too, one can realize and see the very important role that civil society played during the 3 months we were in isolation. A lot of us were in isolation and also being affected. And it was amazing to see the new initiatives, the new partnerships, the new alliances with the business sector, with the government that came about. So the spirit of solidarity and actually dealing with the most vulnerable is part of civil society's role, which is important and must carry on. And here I would say that we are all now on a new testing ground as NGOs. We all have to be looking at our business models. What business model are we going to have? How are we going to cope with this new normal? How are we going to cope remotely? Sometimes because of the clients we can't be dealing with face-to-face. So there have been huge challenges for the sector. And of course, I would say the biggest challenge for the sector is the financial side. Because if there are NGOs, and we have a lot of grassroots small NGOs in Malta who are doing excellent and very important work and have always depended on donations and contributions and fundraising. Of course, today it's a much bigger challenge because out there, the business sector themselves too, the ones who we always partnered with for our contributions and the corporate giving that Malta has always had and the generosity of the second sector, is, of course, suffering. So it's quite obvious that we as NGOs have to be looking at alternative funding programs, alternative funding mechanisms, and how are we going to mitigate all our challenges because of COVID.
Okay. Thank you, Claudia. Great introduction there. And Lisa, I'll come to you now. You obviously are on the board for the Food Bank, and the Food Bank was very much in the public eye at the start of the pandemic. I think everybody I know was gathering tins and dried food and things like that we could think of to bring over to the Food Bank because we were suddenly more aware than ever of the strains on people in the lower stratas who perhaps couldn't afford to feed their families. So I know at the beginning of the pandemic, certainly there was a massive drive to help the food bank. How has that developed since then?
You're right. At the beginning, there was a massive drive, and we were very lucky that businesses were very generous and individuals were very generous in helping us. That has now started to decrease because I think what has happened is that people are a bit more cautious about giving now. We don't know how long this is going to go on for, and it is putting pressure on individuals and how much they are able to donate to NGOs like us. So yes, we have seen a change there.
Okay. And Claire, coming to you now, you are over at Inspire. Inspire, obviously, a very, very well-known local charity that many people would think to donate to in normal times, for want of a better way of putting it. How have you been affected?
Well, we try and, apart from our fundraising, we also try and self-sustain ourselves. So we have a number of social enterprises that usually, in the normal course of work, help us fund ourselves. So we have our charity shops, we have our gym, where obviously people with a disability come free of charge. But then if you and I want to pay a membership, we come and pay a membership, and that helps sustain the rest of our operations. These all had to close down, obviously. So we had that loss of income. Apart from that, we have partnerships with people who organize events, for example, to raise funds, and these obviously all had to stop. And we actually forecast that by the end of the year, we'll have a reduction in income of about 1/4 of our annual revenue, which is $1 million, a full $1 million. So that is quite a big hit that we've taken.
Wow, $1 million is definitely, as you say, a huge hit. And of course, going to affect the people that need it most. And Claudia, I'll come to you again now. I mean, why do we need to be concerned about the fact that obviously NGOs are being hit? I mean, why should we be worried that this is going to take a hit?
If we look at the NGO service providers in Malta, there are NGOs who are giving essential services to the most vulnerable in our society. So these are the NGOs who we really need to be looking at, creating these new alliances, as I mentioned, but also I think within the NGOs themselves, we're going to have to be as creative and as innovative as possible. As Claire mentioned, they try to self-sustain themselves. Yeah. So now the self-sustaining has taken a big hit.
Absolutely.
So how can we overcome that big hit, increase our capacity as a sector, to see how creative we can be in forging these new alliances and seeking new funding mechanisms. We as SOS Malta are a fund operator too. We are the fund operator of the Active Citizens Fund. And we were very surprised that so few NGOs came forward with proposals. The deadline unfortunately coincided during the period we were on partial lockdown or in isolation and all working remotely. And this affected, now that's an indicator. Should we be looking at our capacity? How are we going to build our capacity? How are we going to forge alliances with other NGOs, strengthen the networking with NGOs? We all know there's duplication of services in the country. We cannot afford this as NGOs. We need to come together to bring our services, to see how we can work together to consolidate what we have and what we have developed. I mean, we've seen government for the first time allocating a good sum of money, I mean the 3 million, to support NGOs who have suffered consequences because of COVID. And we are still being supported. But now when that support ends, I mean, we've got two sectors here. the business sector who's being supported till the end of September, and also the NGOs who are being supported till September, October. Are we planning as NGOs to see what we're going to do beyond that? And I think this is what we all have to do. And at SOS Malta, this is what we're doing. We have planned and our vision and creating the necessary mechanisms to do the diversifying of the funding, plus also the project funding, because if we are project-based, and then your funding is secured. And today, our funders at project level are all being very flexible to safeguard, obviously, the sector with the salaries of our staff.
I see. Lisa, if I come to you for sort of further feedback on what Claudia has been telling us, how important is collaboration at this stage?
I think Claudia is absolutely right. I think it is all about collaboration when we're moving forward. I mean, we've already worked with other NGOs during this time. We worked with the Foodbank in Malta, with the Malta Trust Foundation, Solidarity Meals, and there is a lot of scope to develop that further, and it has to be the way forward, so that there isn't duplication of services, exactly what Claudia was saying. And if we are going to be able to provide to our clients, then that's what we would need to do. Yes, certainly.
Okay. Lisa, I'll stay with you just for a comment on perhaps the challenges to NGOs at this time. Obviously, we are seeing that there has been support from the government for NGOs. But in the UK, for instance, charities are looking at 1 in 10 going bankrupt by the end of the year and a £10 billion shortfall. Do you think there will be NGOs in Malta that are facing the sad reality of having to cease operation?
I think certainly there may well be NGOs that will be facing that. I think costs have increased and funding has decreased, and so I think it may well affect and cause the closure of some of them, which would be very sad. And it's also because some of the activities and the fundraising that is done, much of it is done in the summer, for example, and we saw, activities being cancelled, such as the Dar Providenza and their volleyball marathon that was cancelled this year. But the government did step in, as I understand, with a significant grant to help them. But I suppose that may not always be the case that they'll be able to do that.
Certainly. And Claire, I'll come to you now. And Philanthropy Impact, which is a global research body which is focused on social investment and the charity sector, they're identifying two problems. One, of course, is the shortfall in the amount of donations that we have. But then, of course, there is also the prevention of the delivery of the mission. Again, is that something that you have faced? I understand, of course, that Inspire you couldn't offer all of the services, but in not being able to offer those services, how are your clients impacted?
Well, it's actually pushed us to be creative and get our act together. Well, change our act in reality. So once we had to close our doors in March, we were faced with the reality that we would probably have to leave our clients without any support. So we thought that this is not sustainable for our clients. Being with a child or an adult with a disability for an amount of time, we see regular improvement. And even during summer months, we try not to leave them for the summer months because an absence of service for a number of weeks leads to regress. So what our team did was they worked very brilliantly, they worked really hard, and very, very quickly we had an online program in place. So we had resources to help. Imagine being a parent with a child without a disability at home, trying to work, and your children are driving you mad. Mm-hmm. Add to that the add-ons of a child with challenges, with a certain disability. So obviously we needed to support these families. So we very quickly created online resources and an online program. We use Teams, and we were supporting the parents, we were supporting the child on a one-to-one basis. And obviously, as the time progressed, our program actually improved, but we've got very, very, very positive feedback. We're really happy with what we got, and it actually pushed us to be a bit innovative and have these systems in place now. So even if the situation comes back to reclosing in September, October, we have the system in place now. We're very happy. We can't provide all the services, obviously, because the tactile service such as physiotherapy can't be done. But at least a lot of the services can be provided.
Thank you, Claire. And Claudia, I'll come to you now. We are obviously in a second wave now. I think we can all admit now that the second wave has hit Malta. Perhaps the first wave obviously was a shock, and we were dealing with particular emotions. Obviously, there will be challenges due to the second wave, and as we can see from sentiment, there has been backlash to migration. How is SOS dealing with that backlash?
Migration is a problem. There's no doubt about it. I mean, and it's not only a Malta problem, but it's a European problem. And the management of migration leaves much to be desired, unfortunately. So we need to be realistic, but we need also to be looking at the human rights of each and every person. And I think COVID again has given us a huge challenge to make sure that we are not violating human rights, as NGOs do, to keep our governments and our authorities accountable, and to make sure that we keep them aware that violations of human rights are absolutely not on. So that is a fundamental operational, if you want to say, activity at civil society level, that we need to make sure that human rights are not violated, and that we as NGOs are human rights-based organizations in anything we do and anything we carry out. So I think we have challenges. Let us step up our advocacy. We mustn't let our voices be muffed or stifled, because what is right and what is wrong is wrong. And migrants obviously fit into the vulnerable category. They are vulnerable people. They are here and coming here because there are difficulties where they are in Libya. So we cannot let them drown, as everybody has agreed on that issue. So yes, migration, and I think NGOs are trying their best and working hard to mitigate all the various challenges, difficulties, human rights issues that we have.
Certainly. And Claudia, I'll stay with you for this one, because I know it's something that you have already mentioned. Of course, there were many downsides to COVID hitting and the challenges that the NGO sector has faced, but were there any opportunities presented as well by the pandemic?
For us at SOS Malta, I think because we had established the online support system, kellimni.com, we were in a very comfortable and also important position to be dealing with all the anxiety situations and psychosocial issues that were arising from the pandemic. Of course, we had people coming in with homelessness, for instance. We'd never dealt with homelessness. The anxiety of people losing their jobs, becoming redundant. So there's all these factors working on the minds of people, the uncertainty that everybody has. Should we go out even? The elderly, the loneliness that there is in the country when you're feeling isolated, when you're isolated. In fact, this is why I think the food the food supply at grassroots level, at community level, was so important. And I would say and appeal today to those who are listening, we mustn't let this stop, because there are vulnerable people who are still needing the assistance of these services which arose because of COVID. But again, then, as organizations and as civil society, we need our voice to be out there as much as possible. And I'll again mention this partnership, the partnership principle. How can we create more partnerships with the business sector, with government, to make sure that we're going to mitigate new issues arising because of COVID? I think the three sectors getting together is very, very important today. And because of the size of our country, and if we work together, we certainly can avoid a lot of severe repercussions that the most vulnerable in our society are going to be facing.
Thank you, Claudia. Lisa, I'll come to you. The Maltese have always been very well known for their generosity, have given a lot to charity in the past. How have you seen that develop over the sort of months now that we have been facing the pandemic? How have things changed, and what awareness do you have about this next wave?
Yes, the Maltese have been very generous, and we've been on the receiving end of that, which has been fantastic, particularly from businesses and from individuals. And without that generosity, we wouldn't have been able to deliver how we were able to the clients and the families that we deliver to, considering that our figures increased so dramatically during that period. The Maltese have been generous. I think it's fair to say as well, not just with donations, but with time as well, because we rely solely on volunteers and people's generosity, where they haven't been able to give monetarily, have given us with their time. How this will be moving forward, I think there'll be a lot more caution with donating. I think if we are able to build up and encourage companies to take us on with regards to CSR, for example, then yes, we can forge, as Claudia said, we can forge those partnerships, and that will help with that moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Claire, I'm going to come to you now just to explain a little bit about the government support that has been made available. Has this been enough to keep things ticking over? And what would you say to policymakers at this point about the support that NGOs are going to need further to this point?
Well, in Inspire's case, there has been a fund that came out, but it's been slow to disburse. Up to now, Inspire has still not received any of this funding. So we're 4 or 5 months down the line, and we've been trying our best to not make people redundant, because obviously we need to maintain our services. But we're really struggling. As I said, our income has reduced considerably. I think the speed of assistance needs to be much higher. As Claudia said, I mean, the partnerships with private companies, with private organizations has been amazing, and it has, in cases, been stepped up. We have to understand also that many organizations in Malta are also facing difficult times. And when we speak to them and ask them for their support, when normally they'd be very, very open to putting their hands in their pockets and helping us, they'll tell us, listen, I'm trying to reduce redundancies, I'm trying to keep my staff on, so I'm sorry, but at this stage I cannot help. So it's this thing that there are some companies who are still doing well, and I ask them to please do think of organizations like Inspire for their CSR, because we have a good number of organizations who are supporting us, but this is still needed. And I think government needs to speed up its assistance as well, because In our case, particularly, we're still waiting for a disbursement, and it's getting desperate at this stage.
I see. Thank you. Claudia, I'll come to you now for a little bit of insight on the volunteering side of things. Have numbers gone up? Have they gone down? And how can people help if they do have the time to donate?
I think volunteering today in the scenario we are living in is vital and important, because the impact of volunteering, working for the benefit of others, is something that we cannot do without. We set up, together with the Malta Health Network, the volunteering task force for COVID, and worked together closely with public health. And we had a huge response. It was amazing the way the Maltese and foreigners who are living in our country responded, from the very simple person in our community to the high professionals that we have. And this is fantastic. But with us, for instance, with SOS Malta, and we worked alongside Volserv. I'm sure you all know Volserv at Mater Dei. That suffered. One, because it was suspended on the 12th of March when we came out in isolation. However, because the volunteering statistically is carried out by the over 60s mainly, they were tabbed as the most vulnerable. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I was one of them. I had to stay in. So that had a hit, a big hit. Now we're trying to go back in slowly but surely, with the restrictions, all the precautionary measures that the hospital requires. But to build up the trust for volunteering again is not, especially now again with the spike, where people want to come into a most vulnerable environment. However, I'm sure, Lisa, you had a lot of volunteering at grassroots level out there in the community. We've seen this, and I think this was a fantastic example of solidarity, which our country rises to the occasion every time we have an emergency. You know, we've seen it with all the overseas emergencies we've had to deal with at SOS Malta. So I would say, and I would appeal also, how can we as the sector build on the capacity that we need within our organizations for the volunteering? The volunteering obviously has a great financial impact too, and it's a financial benefit for our organizations. How can the business sector give and start looking at corporate volunteering? Have they ever brought in the concept of corporate volunteering to assist NGOs? There are some organizations who do it through their corporate social responsibility, but I think we need more of it. We need more partnerships of volunteering, and maybe even pro bono hours from the business sector to their employees to be offering this corporate volunteering to the organizations, especially to the service providers, who, as Claire mentioned, are finding it so difficult to sustain the salaries of their service providers. Luckily for us at SOS Malta and organizations like ours, who are project-based, it wouldn't have affected us so much. And plus also with kelnimni.com as a service provider, where we have a public social partnership with the government, we're covered. But if your liquidity as organizations is down to a bare minimum, then organizations are going to have a problem. Because if you don't have liquidity, and if we're not going to have liquidity for the future and post now, even after this second wave, the vision, how is our business model going to change? Our business model has to change with everything that's happening around us.
And Claudia, I'll stay with you on that. And in light of that, how is the business model for NGOs going to change? If we had to delve a little deeper into that, what do you expect to be the changes for the sector?
Let me tell you, the sector needs to, first and foremost, have very sound, developed financial management. If we don't have, and unfortunately, a lot of the organizations do not invest in financial management. And when you're budgeting or looking at expenditure, it's vital. I mean, we're having to deal, for us at the moment, and I'm sure, Claire, you can say the same, and probably Lisa too. It's my financial department, which is the hub of our organization, not my project officers. My project officers are key to implementing the project and the services. But the financial management is the hub to make sure that the organization is going to carry on and is not going to fail and not going to have to pack up. We've had an experience, for instance, with one of our partners in Austria, who's had to go into liquidation. So we're dealing with the Malta agency now as the lead on a project to see how we can mitigate, how we can carry on the project without an organization which has had to leave. So these are things organizations are going to be facing every day. You know, partners, ourselves having to stop projects, having to stop services. So the financial management of the organization needs to be strengthened. I would also recommend to organizations need to be looking for all the funding mechanisms, all the project funding the Commission gives us as NGOs, to be creative and innovative, to fit in to the parameters of the operations of our organizations. Like that, if we're creative and if we're innovative in the way we address our situation, and we mustn't be afraid of change. Okay, you can expend something and start something else. With the experience we have as NGOs at grassroots level with the most vulnerable, that's what we have to do. And I think we can do it with a lot of enthusiasm and the belief that we have, not only within our organization, but also within the third sector. The third sector cannot be lost in a democracy. We need a strong, vibrant third sector. And together with the first and the second sector, that means government and the business sector, we can carry on contributing to the most vulnerable and for the benefit of our society.
Thank you, Claudia. And now, Lisa, as we start to sort of wrap up our conversation, perhaps you could enlighten us about what businesses can do for our business viewers that are watching off the back of Claudia's rousing thoughts there. They want to get involved. They want to help. Where should they start?
Okay. If businesses want to get involved, then there is the opportunity for CSR. That's a great way of being involved in NGOs. We've benefited hugely from that. We have great relationships with the companies that we work with, and they've helped us considerably. So I would say if companies do want to, that is certainly the way forward for it.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Over to you, Claire, for your thoughts on what companies should do to get involved. Oh, we have lost Claire just for a moment there, so we'll come back to Claire for her final thoughts. Claudia, again, back to you then. I'm a company, I'd like to get involved, I want to help, where do I start?
I think aligning your business to an organization and to the ethos of the business and the organization, and believing in the accountability, the good governance that we should all be operating within. There are great opportunities for the business sector to promote themselves also with this philosophy of solidarity, which every country needs so much today. I think the solidarity pillar, which is a trademark of our country, needs to be strengthened more and more, especially in the circumstances we're living in. And together, I think we can make the difference that we need to carry on making to everybody in society.
Thank you. And finally, just to completely wrap up, I'd like to ask you both your advice to other people in the NGO sector who perhaps are feeling a bit downtrodden by the way things are developing, by the fact that the second wave is with us, and perhaps they were feeling like the end was in sight and they could start to get back to normal. Lisa, what would you say to them?
I think the advice that I would give is, look at what's happened so far, learn from that, see how you can plan the second wave and be more prepared for it and what that's going to throw at us. Also, it is about being more creative in what you're doing, and particularly reach out, because we found, particularly when we reached out to people, they did help us. And when we put that call out, they were happy to help us with support, however it may have been, whether in money and donations or with time. So yeah, reach out to people.
Thank you. Claire, welcome back. I was just asking everybody to give their final thoughts on their advice to other leaders within the NGO sector, perhaps some thoughts on what they could be doing if they are feeling that this time is very difficult.
I think the very important take home from this situation is that NGOs, similar to companies, need to be agile at this time. We need to use this time, use this time to rethink its model, and we've rethought our strategy going forward. So we have a model that is much faster to respond. That is, I think, key at this time in our situation. And we have an organization that is very lean, and it is important that NGOs think like a professional company. As Claudia mentioned earlier, we need to invest in areas like financial management. We need to invest in other professional management systems that help us to operate. Initially, it might mean that we might incur some costs, but operating like a professional organization means that we will have the tools and the resilience to move forward. And I think that is the most important take home for us. Particularly, we found this as a way to regenerate our systems.
Absolutely. Claire, thank you. And finally, Claudia, your final thoughts for other NGOs.
I would tell NGOs, we need to be visionaries, and we need to see beyond and plan. I love the way Claire mentioned rethinking, re-strategizing, to be able to deal with all the challenges that we're facing. We have staff challenges, we have cost challenges, we have fundraising challenges, we have all the challenges, yes, that the business sector has. And yes, we need to operate like we're running a company. So if you're running a company, you need the professional ethical standards that a company requires within their management. So it's not easy, especially for smaller NGOs. And this is why I say, get together, let's network, let's share our resources, let's share even our offices if necessary to mitigate costs. I think we need to trust each other more as NGOs and to be able to work together in a very calm environment with the aims and objectives for what were set up.
Thank you. Well, Claudia, Claire and Lisa, thank you so much for being with me today. Thank you for all your advice, not just to other NGOs, but of course to our business viewers who are looking to help now more than ever. So thank you again for being with me. And to all of our viewers at home or in the office, thank you once again for being with us on The Boardroom. I look forward to seeing you next time.